1, 2, 3. Hey there, it's Tyler Grant. In bluegrass music, tunes and songs often begin with a kickoff. It's a short instrumental introduction that signals the start of a song and provides the other players with information about the tempo, key, and where to begin playing. And as flat pickers, there are some tried and true approaches that sound authentic and musical. And that's exactly what we'll dive into here in this course. We're going to work through a variety of popular bluegrass jam standards in multiple keys. I'll first cover the rhythm and lead melody approaches, techniques such as crosspicking, essential licks, useful scales, and much more. This provides the context to learn some great kickoffs I've prepared for you, and strategies to craft your own kickoffs with confidence. We'll practice and play together using TrueFire's learning tools. I'll show you examples, and we'll put it to work right away over a backing track. Okay, flat pickers, grab that guitar, let's kick it off.
All right, everyone. Welcome to another TrueFire Live. I am Jeff Sheets, Director of Education at TrueFire, and want to welcome everyone here. We've got a really good show lined up tonight with one of our favorite players. I'm sure one of yours as well. Tyler is going to be doing a lot of cool stuff, showing us a bunch of cool licks. We'll play a couple of examples from his new course, and most importantly, be answering your questions. So the important thing is, drop in the chat where you're watching from. Love to see where everyone is tuning in from to start with. And then any questions you have, put them in there. Tyler will try to get to as many questions as he can. He's got some cool stuff prepared, so he's going to be going through some things. But man, if this is an opportunity to ask questions from someone who is a National Flatpicking champ, amazing player, great educator, so it's a really cool opportunity to do that. So another cool TrueFire Live here tonight. Without further ado, though, I want to just say we're so glad to have Tyler here because he does so many things with jam play. We'll talk about this a little bit later. TrueFire and his new artist work school. He's sort of all in one, does everything. So without further ado, let's say hello to Tyler Grant. How's it going, buddy?
Hi, Jeff. I'm doing well. How are you?
I am great, man. Well, I mean, I'm a little under the weather, but other than that, I am here no matter what. Can't keep me away from this fun time tonight. So where are you at right now? Whereabouts in the world are you?
I'm in Vernal, Utah. Any of you out there heard of Vernal, Utah? So we are on the outskirts of Dinosaur National Monument, where I work part-time in the summer as a river guide. This was an interesting pivot of the pandemic times when I'd been on the road for 20 plus years, and the pandemic shut all that down, and I had the opportunity to come entertain some folks on a multi-day river trip. And I loved the experience so much, I stayed and became a guide. So I'm out here running river trips and entertaining folks on these trips as part of the River Wondergrass series with the Drift Dinosaur. So I ducked into neighboring Vernal, Utah to get a hotel room to rest up a little bit, have some air conditioning, and check in with y'all on this live stream event. I'm honored to be here.
That is amazing. So you guys get to go out and not only float down the river, but actually play some music out there, right?
Indeed. We run the Gates of Lador section of the Green River and the Yampa River as well in the early season while it's running. It's all in Dinosaur National Monument in these beautiful, pristine wilderness river canyons. It is an international dark sky designated location, so we see the stars at night, and we set up camp and serve high quality meals, and then the band plays for the people, fully acoustic in these beautiful canyons with the sound of the rippling waters behind us, and it has permeated my musical experience in a big way and also affected the music I've been composing ever since I've gotten involved.
I'm sure that's amazing. Listening to some bluegrass with a campfire and under the stars and echoing off your canyons. Yeah. So that's an amazing thing. If anyone's interested in that, definitely check out. They could probably go to Wondergrass and find that experience.
It's all on my website,
cool.
tylergrant.com.
Awesome. Go check that out. And Tyler could be your guide during the day, performer at night.
Indeed.
So awesome, man. So we are really here talking about a lot of things, but the main thing is your new course, your new TrueFire course. And we'll be dropping links to that in the chat as well. We've got people tuning in from Iowa. I grew up in Iowa, so I love that. Austin, Texas, Brisbane, Australia, Salem, Asheville, Illinois, Ontario. I mean, all over the place, which is really awesome to see all you guys here. That's very cool. A lot of Bluegrass fans, a lot of Tyler Grant fans, I am sure, here tonight. We will talk a little bit about this, but we're going to show some clips and some examples. But tell us a little bit about this new course, Bluegrass Kickoffs. Let's start off, and talk a little bit about it in the intro, but let's talk a little bit about kickoffs, because now I'm a Kansas City guy, so the only kickoffs I'm interested in right now are for my beloved Kansas City Chiefs, with football season about ready to happen. But tell us.
Sorry, man. I'm a Chargers fan. So.
Oh, hey, it's the match coming up right now.
That's right.
We will be kicking off the season and seeing how it goes, man. So
that's right.
Tell us about Bluegrass Kickoffs. Give us a definition and maybe why that's important.
Well, this is a great analogy, because in football, the kickoff starts the game, or starts the play. And in bluegrass music, the kickoff starts the song. So basically, and this is true also for country music, this is kind of something that evolves out of, folk music, old-time music, bluegrass music, country music. It's similar terminology between these styles. And when I say I'm going to kick off the song, that means there's going to be a song that has a melody, that has a certain set of chord changes. They're usually very simple melodies, usually very simple changes in this style. And one of the instruments will typically kick it off. So in bluegrass style, you most commonly hear the banjo, the fiddle, or maybe the mandolin kick off the song. You've probably heard this. Here comes the banjo, giving an introduction to the song. So I wanted to show guitar players how to kick off songs in the bluegrass style. So in this course, I teach 8 or 9 standard songs. And I go through all the components that you need to know the song to be able to play it. And then we work different flat-picking guitar concepts in as we move through the course, and use each of these different techniques to work up a kickoff, so that if you are in a jam session, or even if you're a solo performer, you can give a very nice instrumental introduction to the song.
Very cool. I mean, so there are different kinds of kickoffs. Obviously, there's different ways to do that. And I know you go over several different ones, right, in the course, different sort of styles to do it with, over different songs, obviously different keys, different things. Let's roll one from the course. Actually, this is, I believe, one of the first ones, John Hardy, right? Now, tell us a little bit about what kind of kickoff are we going to listen to here?
Yeah, so John Hardy is just a standard bluegrass song. Everybody in this style knows this one. And it has a very simple melody. And what I'm demonstrating in this kickoff is kind of an introductory concept of what I call melody strum, where you alternate the melody notes with strums on the guitar. So you'll hear that in this performance.
Awesome. Let's give it a listen.
One, two, three. Now John Hardy was a desperate little man, strapped on his guns every day, shot down a man on the West Virginia line. Got to see John Hardy getting away, oh boy. Got to see John Hardy getting away.
Awesome. So that's something that you sort of described, and that most everyone has heard before, that sort of a kickoff. Talk a little bit about it. Let's give us a little bit of information about how you come up with that, why you would do that instead of something else?
Sure. Well, that song, John Hardy, I selected the key of G. It's a common key for vocalists and the most common key that you would hear this song performed. And it's just a very basic melody, so I thought this was a great place to start because the melody is simply with this fast rhythm going da, 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 So I'm demonstrating the concept, and when you're in a bluegrass band, you're going to have people playing rhythm for you. So you could just simply play the melody. But we as bluegrass musicians are striving to make this more interesting. And one component of the bluegrass style is that we're playing very simple music, but we're decorating it to the point where it sounds very exciting, flashy, and interesting. So for me on guitar, the bass line of that begins with learning the melody, learning the rhythm part, meaning the chords and the type of strum, and, you know, ways of varying those things. And then I put it together with a thing called melody strum. So I'm just simply alternating those melody notes with rhythm strums. And this style was made popular in the 1930s by Maybelle Carter, Mother Maybelle from the original Carter family, who made a lot of songs standard, I should say. Songs we know, like Keep on the Sunny Side and You Are My Sunshine, and songs like that. So Maybelle played with this type of style, and it really permeated folk and bluegrass and country music beyond that. So for me, this is the bass line of self-accompaniment on guitar. We don't have to just play melody. We can mix it in with rhythm strums. We can mix it in with a couple of other concepts, which we'll get to here as we move on. But I wanted to start with John Hardy and getting just a simple melody strum arrangement together. And that is demonstrated in these performances with me singing the song after the kickoff. So you hear it in this context of a kickoff. Now, and again, just a reminder, a kickoff, that just means it's an instrumental introduction of the song. So if I'm going to sing the song, I'm always going to kick it off in a way like this. However, you can also, if you're not a singer and you're not around other singers, you can take this as its own standalone instrumental arrangement. So there's lots to gain here. This is almost like, you know, a bluegrass music survival guide for guitar.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's good stuff. And that feels like something that everyone that wants to play bluegrass should be able to do what you just played there, right? They should be able to really focus on that and get that feel, because it's something you hear in a lot of tunes. You hear that over and over again. So what would be the next step, right? So like, what's kind of the next step from this once you sort of have that down? And that's the kind of cool thing about this course, the way you've laid it out, is it goes from simple to a little bit more spicy, to a little bit more complex, and keeps building, right? So that build up in complexity, I think, is what makes it really work, because anyone can jump in and play this course. You know, if they've got a little bit of basic skills, they can jump right in and start doing some of these kickoffs. But where would you go next? What's the next step?
Yeah, you got it. That's the idea, starting with basic components and having something for everybody. Even if you don't get this complete kickoff arrangement, along the way, I show you a more basic version. So for every one of these kickoffs, there's also a basic version of an arrangement which demonstrates the concept we're working on. So the next step beyond melody strum in my curriculum is crosspicking. So since I was already playing that John Hardy, I'll give a quick run through of how you would arrange that for crosspicking. If you have the melody strum like this, Then we learn some basic cross-picking patterns, which means you alternate strokes in arpeggiated chords, like that kind of thing. So that melody would go. So replacing the strum with a cross-picking pattern. So the first song in the chorus that I use this concept for is another very standard song that all the bluegrass people know, and it's called Bury Me Beneath the Willow. So I am going to demonstrate a different chord shape here, a different key. So that one was G position, and this one is going to be C position. However, I'm capoing up. So you're also learning about how to use the capo in this course, because that is a crucial part of bluegrass guitar. Because we like to keep things in open position for these types of styles, melody, strum, cross-picking. It doesn't mean I can't play in the key of E, I certainly can. However, we like to have these open strings ringing. So in this one, we're using a C position, a C chord shape here. But for the sake of the vocalist, and for the sake of getting a little bit more of a chimey sound out of the guitar, I'm capoing on the 4th fret. So here we are in the key of E, and this melody goes like this. Bury me beneath the willow, under the weeping willow tree. So in this lesson, what I do is I break it down, I show you the chord changes and the type of rhythm to strum, and then I show you how I have decided which melody notes are the most important. So I have a very basic version of the melody, which is... and so on. And then I apply the previous concept of melody strum to it. So we do a melody strum version. Then I show you some cross-picking patterns. And then we play a cross-picking arrangement. So I will go ahead and kick off Bury Me Beneath the Willow. So I'll play that cross-picking heavy kickoff, and then I'll sing a verse and a chorus, just so you can hear how this goes for kicking off a song like this. My heart is sad and I am lonely for the only one I love. When shall I see her? Oh, no, never, till we meet in heaven above. So bury me beneath the willow, under the weeping willow tree, so she will know where I am sleeping, and perhaps she'll weep for me.
Very cool, very cool. I think that's a great lesson, and something that's really important is probably to make sure you know the chords before you start worrying about anything of the other stuff, the cross picking or anything, because most of those melodies are found within the chords, right? And when you want to do a chord strum, having that chord there is really good. So when you sort of advise, maybe people that are newer students to really just get the rhythm down, get those chords down and the changes.
For sure. For me, the two basic components, the melody and the chords, are where you begin. And in each of these lessons, that is exactly where we do begin. Before we even get into the technique or the concept, I start with, a basic version of the melody and the chord changes. And you're exactly right that in this style of guitar playing, the chord shapes are very important because that is where you're going to find your self accompaniment, and it's also where you're going to find the set of notes you would use in single note licks. And you'll hear in bluegrass style a lot, even if I'm taking a solo on this. And by the way, a solo, we call it a break. So I'm going to take a guitar break here. If I was to continue the song after that first verse and chorus, you'd hear me play a guitar break. And I'll do some single notes. And I'll throw little strums in and little sections of each chord. So yes, this is a complete understanding of how the song goes with the melody and the chords, and then we build upon that.
Awesome. Yes, I think that's really good advice. I think that's a good place for everyone to start. If you're just getting into, bluegrass style, it's a great place to get going. And a lot of times people who are just learning their chords to start with can start playing songs right away, which is, important and a lot of fun, right? I want to just point out that this is a great course, but you have so many great courses. You have many, many courses that you did with Jam Play that you can now find at TrueFire. You've got TrueFire courses, and then you've got your Artist Works School. So people that really want to jump in and study with you, be able to get feedback from you on what they're playing, which is super cool and super important. The Artist Works School is really a great spot for that. So talk a little bit about that. Talk a little bit about the different ways that people can sort of learn from you.
For sure. The Artist Works Flatpicking Academy, that's what I called it, is a complete curriculum. And I'm grateful that I had 10 years of experience teaching on camera. I've been teaching now for 30 years. But I started doing lessons for Jam Play, which was based in Colorado, in 2013. And I did many, many courses for them in many different styles: bluegrass, country, rock and roll, jam band. We started getting into the song lessons, so some Allman Brothers songs, Doobie Brothers songs, Eagles, classic country stuff. There's a bunch of complete songs where you can learn the exact parts from me on acoustic and electric guitar. And I had all of this experience teaching on camera, which is its own game. It's its own sport. No matter how great an instructor you are, you got to get used to being in the studio with the bright lights and being under the cameras and delivering the information in a way that is informative and concise and entertaining. So I had 10 years of experience doing that before I was approached by Artist Works to do my complete school. And it was such a great opportunity, having been an educator for so long, having been involved in bluegrass workshops all over the world, in music camps and things that we do in this style, and having taught so much online material. It was a great opportunity for me to put together my masterpiece of bluegrass education. So I put together a complete curriculum from beginning all the way to the branches of where you can go once you get this style down. So, and when I went to TrueFire Studios to film this Bluegrass Guitar Kickoffs course, I also spent 4 days adding a whole bunch of material to the Artist Works School. So again, I believe it was already a complete curriculum to begin with, and it goes through concepts, techniques, all the fundamentals of what you would need to be a bluegrass guitarist, which to me applies to any style you're playing. This is all going to help your technique no matter what you're getting into: jazz, rock and roll, bluegrass, anything. They're all very related styles. So, but the bluegrass style itself is sort of athletic and sort of flashy. So I'm very focused on technique and the finer points of how you're holding the instrument, how you're using the pick, and that kind of thing. And it works through a traditional way of learning this style, which is you learn the concept and then you learn a song to apply it to. and then you learn an instrumental to apply that to. So I go through lots of standard songs and tunes in the course, and it is a wonderful platform because you can send me videos, and so we can interact one-on-one, sort of like a private lesson, but condensed and getting right to the point. So when you subscribe to Artist Works on the Premier level, you know, they're about to relaunch the site, which is very exciting. They've updated it and added some features that are going to make it more efficient and more accessible for not just the participants, but for me as an instructor as well. So I just love it because people can send me the video of what they're working on, and then I will send them a video in reply. And those video exchanges live on the platform, and everyone else can watch them and sort of participate in this community together in an interactive way. So I'm very proud of the Flatpicking Academy, and shout out to all you watching who are participants there.
Very good, very good. Yes, I think it's a really cool way for someone that just wants to immerse themselves in everything you're doing. The curriculum is great, and then being able to send a video in, get some feedback is really cool too. Of course, if you just want to grab a course, go work on it on your own. There's a ton of the Jam Play courses, like you said, in many different styles and the TrueFire stuff. So for sure, just go check out Tyler Grant's page at TrueFire. There's links to everything there. You can find all of the stuff and dig in. So lots to dig in. Let's roll another bit from the course, as a matter of fact, because we're just still progressing through it. So I believe we're going to do the sitting on top is, I think, the next sort of step. So let's roll this track, and then we'll basically come back and talk a little bit about it.
One, two, three.
That's great. So tell us a little bit about that one. Let's kind of look at how we're progressing here. What's this next step?
Yeah, so the next step beyond melody, strum, crosspicking is getting into some single note vocabulary. So in other words, learning licks, learning bluegrass guitar licks, and how you can weave those in to a melody. And then you have this complete toolkit of how to approach not only a bluegrass guitar kickoff, but how to approach a bluegrass guitar solo. When you're doing a solo or a break, remember, as we call them, you are given the liberty to expand a little bit beyond the melody. You know, you can riff on it a little bit more extensively. But in the kickoff, we're still trying to keep the melody true throughout the kickoff. So there's ways of doing that. And on this song, you know, I demonstrate a melody strum like, and how you can do that, you know, and keep it simple, keep it traditional. But then, you know, I work in some flashier single note licks. So in that sense, I could start with the melody note and then start getting into and then bring it back to the melody. So you're learning an effective kickoff, a very musical and tasteful kickoff, but adding just a little bit more flash to it by working in, you know, some bluegrass guitar licks. So as we get into the last, you know, few numbers in the course, we're starting to branch off in this direction. And that's what we do here on Sitting on Top of the World. And this is just, again, a super standard song. Anywhere you go, where there's people who know bluegrass music, this is one that would be great to have prepared, because you'll have a great song that you can kick off and everyone can jam on it. And that is truly half the fun of this style, is that it's a community-based style, and there's people everywhere who play it, even on very basic levels. You can slow it down. You don't have to play it at this flashy bluegrass tempo. There's lots of groups you can find in your community who would play a song like this and just play it at the level that they're at. So that's the beauty of it, is it's just accessible, and you can start at the basics and branch out and get to this flashy level with it.
That's great. If anyone has any questions for Tyler, just drop them in the comment section. We'll get to those. We've got one question here, which is, how would you start working on your single note skills as a bluegrass player? Where do you start with that? Are you working with scales? Are you working with chord tones? How do you get started if you want to play some bluegrass melody stuff, single note things?
Sure. For me, it really begins with knowing the songs, knowing the melodies, and that is they're all related to the major scale. So understanding your C major scale, I always start anyone I'm working with, I'll make sure they have a true understanding of the C major scale. And not just meaning that they can play it up and down. Like if I'm practicing a C major scale, I'm not going. I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm memorizing those scale degrees, the sounds of the scale degrees. Because that way, anytime you hear a melody that goes ba 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 ba, you'll know where the sounds are, and you can find that stuff by ear. So understanding a C major scale, and then eventually branching off to G major and then D major. Those are the 3 main positions you need to know for playing bluegrass guitar, because everything else, you can use the capo to get to any other key. So understanding your basic major scales, and then getting into some simple melodies, like John Hardy. I mean, that's kind of how I lined up this course, is to start with very simple melodies to begin with. And I also teach those methods in the Flatpicking Academy. So this is a style, I don't know, when I learned guitar in high school and I started taking lessons when I was 14, my teacher taught me the intro to Purple Haze and taught me the intro of this, essentially the kickoffs to these songs. The beginning of this Doors song, or this cool lick, or the solo to Stairway to Heaven. In this style, the songs have repeated forms. It's just like a verse and a chorus, and there's nothing more than that. So they're very easy to learn. And to understand this style, it really depends on you learning the complete song. And most of these songs are far more basic than those songs that I mentioned. It's not like learning Stairway to Heaven, where there's all these guitar parts that are essential to each different section, and there's sections that don't repeat, and a whole new part coming up. With these, it's so simple. They're folk songs. It's like, think about You Are My Sunshine. Think about This Land Is Your Land. These are the types of melodies that you're going to be playing in bluegrass style. So starting with the simple ones and understanding what scale that's from, and then learning little bits of vocabulary. So if you're doing something like This Land Is Your Land, and I'm going, a lick that applies to that part of the melody could be, so there's licks that apply to each degree of the chord, all the degrees of the scale as they relate to the melody. And then there's this thing called a fiddle tune. And the fiddle, the violin, is sort of the genesis of instrumentals in this style. So there's fiddle tunes that you learn, which are really, really fun. And they're a little more notey, and they have these like little figures like little scale sequences, and things where you do this shuffly down up, down up, down up kind of style. And so you start learning fiddle tunes, and then that informs your vocabulary of how you can essentially fiddle around with the basic melodies of these songs.
Great. So another question, are there standard cross-picking patterns across all chords? Are there some standard patterns? And if there are, show us a couple of those.
Great question. Yes, there certainly are, and I have them broken down into a few of the basic components. And the way I categorize it is you're either going forward, meaning low to high, or you're going backward from high to low, or you're doing, I might call that a reverse roll, forward roll, reverse roll, and then you'll have forward reverse that go forward and then reverse, like. So that's the direction, 3 different directions, forward, reverse, or forward, reverse. And then you have the number of strings, and the strings tend to be consecutive. So if I'm doing a 4-note forward roll, say I'm going to start on the D string and play each string in succession from the D up to the high E with alternating strokes. So that's a 4-note forward roll. 4 notes, always going forward. Then you have a 4-note reverse roll. Then a 4-note forward reverse. So that's a standard roll that you need to know. And these are not just applicable in a musical sense for your arrangements, but it's great practice. You know, I mean, very precise down-up picking. And that, again, can apply to any style. And then there's the one that is the most leaned on, you know, the one that I tend to use the most because it has a great rhythmic propulsion to it, and it imitates the sound of the banjo, and it's the 3-note forward roll. So that would be 3 notes in succession repeated. There's 2 different specific techniques for playing that one, which I get into in the course. I demonstrate both ways of doing it technically. But what you hear is a neat, what we call a hemiola, one rhythm against another rhythm. So we're in 4/4. So 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and. So you can almost hear that banjo sound, and it gives it that syncopation that makes bluegrass music so interesting and so fun and, you know, rhythmic, danceable.
Very good stuff. Those are great patterns for everyone to practice. And I think that's some really good stuff. The good news about this, everyone watching, is this video will be posted to our YouTube account. So you can watch it over and over again, get some of those patterns down. But for sure, if you want to dig deeper, check out the course, check out the Artist Works Flatpicking Academy. There's just so much good stuff on there that we don't quite have time to go into. If you're not familiar with what the things you can do at the TrueFire course, Shane, let's pull up another track and let's take a look at some of the tools there. I think you can just maybe go through a couple of the tools. You know, this is what the course looks like at TrueFire. You know, you've basically got the ability to select what lesson you're working on. You've got the ability to loop things. You can play a section. You can loop a section. It's kind of amazing the different ways you can work with the actual content. Not only can you basically play along, you can loop a section. You can slow down a section. There's just a lot of information right there. Just loop that section, super easy. You could slow the whole thing down if it's too fast. The video is always in sync with the tab. So anywhere you click in the video, it jumps to that spot in the tab. Anywhere you click in the tab, the video jumps to there. You know, if you've got fingerboard notation, animation, it's just kind of amazing all the things you can do there. So There's a lot of cool learning tools at TrueFire. I think that's one thing that really makes these lessons so valuable, is because you just have the ability to dig in as deep as you want. If it's easy for you, yeah, just watch it and play along, and there you go, you're off and running. Most of these tracks will have a jam track with them. Once again, Tyler breaks things down, shows them to you, but then does a straight performance so you can perform along with him. You can break down and work on the parts individually. So anyway, just really cool learning tools there that you can use to really dig into the teaching much more in depth, right? So it's basically like having Tyler there and slowing him down and speeding him up and looping parts and what was that part? And it's just all right there. So a really great way to experience the course here, I think.
It's so well organized, the way you have it on the platform there, and being able to read the notation along. And for sure, when you're learning this style, in the old days, people had, you would take a record and slow the record down. Or, back in the 70s and 80s, they started, I think Marantz brand made a tape deck that you could put in a tape and play it at half speed. So that is how most people in that era learned bluegrass guitar, and up until I was learning in the 90s. That was the technology that we had. Nowadays, you can go on the TrueFire site here, as you said, and you can slow it to half speed, and it doesn't even drop an octave like it does when you're like slowing down a record or a tape. It'll stay in the same pitch. So for sure, that is a crucial part of learning this style, because it's supposed to, it ends up going by fast and flashy, but when you break it down and you put it at a tempo that's reasonable to your skill level, it just makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely, man. When I bought my Marantz, I saved up my money best I could and bought my Marantz cassette player and could slow things down. That just changed my life, because before that, it was slowing down a record. It wasn't exact. You'd put your hand on the record, you'd try to slow it down and listen.
Retune.
Oh yeah, retune. It was always, the pitch was different, and that was the good old days. Kids these days don't know about that. I mean, there was no tab. There was no tab. There was no guitar magazines. There was no VHS. It was like, oh my gosh, those were the dark ages. Now that I think about it. So basically, it's like cheating now. So pretty much, there's no excuse now. You should everybody's a great player now, and that's why, because they got all the tools for it. So check out all of Tyler's stuff at TrueFire. Once again, there's so many good courses there. If you were going to tell someone, pick out a couple things that they could do besides your artist work school and this course, which is great for learning songs and getting things kicked off. Some of the other stuff you've done has been really good stuff, and a lot of cool country stuff. Talk a little bit about the connection between like some of the classic country and bluegrass and how close those things really are.
For sure. The country and bluegrass styles are song oriented. So again, when you're playing something in a country guitar style, you got to know the song, you got to know the chord changes, you got to know the melody. And everything you do beyond that, playing single note licks, arrangements of the melody, or, chord melody kind of stuff, is all based on that information. So all of those courses that I do, there's and I'm a method-based guy. I went to college for classical guitar. I mean, among other things. I was on the classical path when I was earning my bachelor's in music, and that informed me of a way of breaking things down in a step-by-step method. Because the classical method, tried and true, you start here, you do this, then you move to this, then you move to this, then you move to this. And like you said, in the dark ages when we were learning rock and roll or bluegrass or country, nobody had those step-by-step methods for those styles. So I've tried to apply that concept, which I learned from the classical method, of taking things very step-by-step. And so with all my courses in country guitar and in bluegrass guitar, I tend to relate what you're playing to the concept, like what scale is this? why are these chord changes relevant, and why is this particular lick relevant to these changes? How is it relevant to the melody, etc.? So some notable courses that I did for Jam Play and TrueFire, I would say the very first one was the Bluegrass Guitar Method. And you're going to see me like not smiling, as I wasn't as good on camera yet. But the information is there, and it's a very nice step-by-step method showing you, like I said, these essential songs, tunes, and the concepts attached to them. So you're working on music, and you're also learning, repertoire along the way. And there are several bluegrass and country lick packs, 30 essential country guitar licks, 30 essential bluegrass guitar licks. There's a couple of those in my catalog there. There is I think it's called Classic Country Telecaster Chops. The title changed a couple times, but it's basically a Telecaster method, and the Telecaster is the country guitar. So that I lined it up just like my bluegrass flatpicking method, to have a method for learning country Telecaster, because you can come into it, learning this solo from Don Rich and Buck Owens of the Buckaroos, or this Albert Lee solo, or learn a solo from some great country player. But in mine, I do those things. I get into like great country guitar solos based on the styles of these great players as it evolved from the 1950s all the way through the 2000s. But along the way, I'm showing you like the techniques, like hybrid picking, chicken picking, things like that for country Telecaster. So those would be a few good courses that would complement this Bluegrass Guitar Kickoffs course. And it doesn't mean that you have to start with those. Like I kind of began on an entry level on this new course. But I'm not repeating any of the material from the Bluegrass guitar method or Bluegrass flatpicking method, or the essential Bluegrass guitar licks. There's also a couple of survival guides, like the Bluegrass Rhythm Survival Guide, which is great if you just want to focus on getting your bluegrass rhythm guitar together, which is so fun. Bluegrass rhythm is just the best. Rhythm, like there's all these lead guitar figures in it, so it's a world of its own. So yeah, there's a Bluegrass Rhythm Survival Guide in there, and yes, the classic country Telecaster course. I'd say those are great courses that would complement this and get you branching out and seeing how the styles are relative to each other.
That's great. So you talked about learning some Hendrix in the early days and stuff. Who are your biggest bluegrass influences, and how you when you got started with that, how did you get so involved? Who was it that really lit you up with that kind of stuff? And maybe give us a couple of influences there.
Yeah, for sure. I was a young Deadhead, I was going to Grateful Dead shows, and the Garcia Grisman albums really influenced me. And through that connection of Jerry Garcia and David Grisman, I got turned on to Tony Rice. And so there I was as a student at CalArts, California Institute of the Arts, and really, really working hard on classical music and classical guitar repertoire. But I always held on to my electric guitar, and I was playing in rock bands. And I grew up in San Diego County, so I was playing in reggae and funk bands and stuff like that. And I always had that going. But I was trying to find my identity. My dad always encouraged me to find my own sound. And I realized when I was in college studying classical guitar, trying to get into flamenco, which was so hard for me. And I'm studying Hindustani, North Indian classical music. And I'm studying West African drumming and dance. And I'm studying, Bulgarian and Macedonian and East European folk music and all this cool odd meter stuff. And my mentor, Miroslav Tadic, was from Serbia, so he was teaching us all these cool Macedonian and Serbian folk songs and how to apply them to guitar and how to jam on them. You know, very similar to what we're doing here in bluegrass. And then I was like, you know, if I'm going to excel at something musically, it should be something that's familiar to me, that comes from like my roots, and maybe that I'm even like culturally connected to. And a friend of mine turned me on to a Tony Rice album, Manzanita. This is kind of a gateway for many players. And from the very first lick of that album, I was floored. I was like, wow, this is bluegrass music. It's a style that I know, that I grew up hearing. My dad listened to bluegrass. You know, I've heard this style, and it takes me outside. It brings me to the outdoors. I'm an outdoors guy, you know, so it takes me to the mountaintop. But I heard Tony Rice playing this on a classical level, like so refined, so toneful. And I thought, okay, this is it. So that was my gateway album, Tony Rice, Manzanita. And that was from my birth year, 1976, when that was released. And it has all the players: Sam Bush, Jerry Douglas, David Grisman, Todd Phillips on the bass, Ricky Skaggs. People, as it turns out, I grew up listening to all these players. My dad was into Ricky Skaggs and Emmylou Harris and all that stuff from the 80s and 90s in country. And I go and look at my dad's albums, and there's Tony Rice, there's Jerry Douglas, there's Sam Bush, there's all these players on all these albums. I'm like, oh, it was like all these light bulbs. And then I'm like, okay, who did Tony Rice learn from? And so I start going back. No matter what style, here's your teaching moment. Any style you're into, if you love a player, people love Billy Strings, right? For good reason. Well, what did he learn from? Well, he learned from Tony Rice. He learned from, you know, the people that Tony learned from, like Clarence White, Doc Watson. Eventually, everyone gets back to Doc Watson, one of the first guitar players to play the fiddle tunes and the Appalachian old-time music and apply it to guitar, stuff that was traditionally more of a fiddle-style music. And then we get into Don Reno. So it's just, you open up this rabbit hole. But all you got to do is find the player you're into. Some folks have gotten into it through me, and I'm honored. But if you get into my style, yeah, for sure, you go back and you say, okay, well, he was heavily influenced by David Greer, Tony Rice, Doc Watson, Clarence White, Norman Blake. We've all been heavily influenced by Norman Blake. So I reference a lot of these players in the courses that I teach. And as bluegrass guitarists, we talk about these people all the time on a first name basis. Norman, oh, do you know Norman's version of this? Oh yeah, well, do you know Tony's version of this? Do you know Billy's version of this, right? And now the branches have extended. There's so many great players out there. Molly Tuttle is out there doing great things. You know, there's players he might not have heard of, like Sean Richardson, who plays with Sierra Hall. He's one of the great players out there right now. Jake Workman, who was playing with Ricky Skaggs for a long time. So it's almost like following baseball. You know, there's all these great players in their positions, or any kind of sport. Sometimes they bounce around from band to band. But yeah, so the top 5, Tony Rice, Norman Blake, Clarence White, Doc Watson, David Greer. Start with those.
That's a good list. So got one more question here. What about, one thing about bluegrass tunes is just something you just mentioned there, which is different people have different versions. So they start with the basic melody, but then everybody has their own sort of take on it. What would you suggest, you know, students do to sort of develop their own take? How do they develop their own sort of identity when they sit down to learn a basic melody? What's the best way to start to expanding that and adding some of your own flavor to it?
That's a great question. When I was getting into Tony Rice, I was learning some of his stuff rote, either transcribing it or finding it, you know, in notation somewhere. And then along the way, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to sound like Tony Rice. I don't really want to sound like him, but I want to figure out what is this thing he's doing. So I would take an arrangement of a song that he did, because he didn't write songs. He wrote some instrumentals, but everything he played had been recorded or performed by somebody else. So I just took note of what he was doing to that, and then I'd go back to the source and say, oh, I see. He took this from the original recording, which might have been Bill Monroe, it might have been Doc Watson, and here's what he did with it. And I would break that down and analyze it and say, cool, I'm going to find a song and do a similar thing to it. So I would go back and find some song that hadn't been done and say, okay, I'm going to apply this little melody strum, this little bit of cross picking, this little single note lick in the style of how Tony Rice arranged his. And I'm going to take that and make my own arrangement. And then I have something that I can own. So again, this is a concept that I cover, extensively in Flatpicking Academy, where if you learn these techniques, you're kind of standing on the shoulders of these people. And it kind of annoys me if I'm at a jam and I hear, and every now and then we'll do this. We'll play like, oh, here comes my break. I'm going to play the Tony Rice break. Because sometimes it's just so good. And then everyone kind of like nods, like, that's cool. But you don't want to do that all the time. We want to sound like ourselves. So it kind of annoys me when people do that too much and they just become a clone of a certain player. So again, I like to just recognize the style, recognize the techniques that player is using, and then go back to the source. I'm always telling people, go back to the source. Like, who recorded this first? And where is the chronology of this? Oh, like, this was recorded in the 1920s by Fiddle and Ed Haley. And then, Doc Watson did a version of it with Clarence Ashley, recorded in the 1950s. And then later on, he did his own version on guitar in the 1960s. And then Clarence White did it in the late 60s. And then Tony Rice did it in the 70s or the 80s. So you can hear like how everybody approached it and the changes that they made to it. So again, the components, and you can be inspired by players and hear the components they're using and use that as a model for working up your own version of a song that you can source from its original recording.
Very cool, man. Really appreciate all your wisdom and insights. Once again, everybody, go check out all of Tyler's stuff, his jam play courses, his TrueFire courses, the Artist Work School, which is amazing. But go to his website, just tylergrant.com, see everything that he's doing, all the other fun stuff, the Wondergrass stuff where he's out. He uses his guitar as a paddle, and then he turns around and plays it. It's amazing. Once you see it, you'll be amazed. So, but man, thanks so much for being here tonight, spending the time with us. I'm glad you got to get in on a little bit of air conditioning, and now it's back out on the river for you. But I'm sure we'll be doing some more stuff out here. But if you've got anything else you want to let people know, but shout out and let them know where the website's probably the best place to find you, right? Your website?
That's the best place to find me, and also my YouTube channel. This was actually inspired by a project that I began during the pandemic, which was the Monday Night Play Along Bluegrass Jam. So here we are locked in. We couldn't get together with one another, and bluegrass players were suffering because this is part of our outlet, is jamming with one another.
Sure.
Going to our weekly jam at this location, or going to someone's house and having a picking party, right? And we couldn't play gigs with each other. So bluegrass players were really struggling, and I wanted to offer something to help them get through the pandemic. So I set up the Monday Night Play Along Bluegrass Jams, and those exist on my YouTube channel. I still do these when I'm in range and I'm not just running around and being in the wilderness or at festivals like I am during the summer. So I'll start them up again live with a certain amount of frequency, later in the fall and the winter when I'm indoors and I have signal. But on my YouTube channel, you find a playlist of Play Along Bluegrass Jams, and on those live streams, what I did was I kind of, treated it like a jam. Like, okay, I'm not here to teach you the song. I'm just here to kind of give you a brief rundown. Here's how it goes. Here's the changes. I'm going to sing you the melody. Here's how I might kick it off. And then now you go. You kick it off, and I'll back you up. And then we'll jam on the song back and forth. And these exist at slow tempo. Every week there was a slow tempo set, a mid-tempo set, and a fast tempo set. So those still exist on my YouTube channel. There are links to these things on my website, tylergrant.com, but you can also just follow me on YouTube. If you go to Tyler Grant, you'll find my channel. I'm the only one, holding a guitar, as far as I know. But that's another place to stay engaged with me and find lots of great resources that you can apply this study in bluegrass guitar and jam along with me anytime.
That's great, man. So thanks you once again for being here. I think we should have you play a song for us. Maybe let's end with a tune. If you want to play us out, play something, and take us out that way. That's the best way, I think, to wrap this thing up, is with your amazing playing. So thank you again for being here. Thank you everyone for watching. Take it away, Tyler.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Shane, behind the scenes, running the show here. And so grateful to be part of the TrueFire community, and also Artist Works and Jam Player as well. So I'll play this out with a good old song. Comes from Bill Monroe, did an early recording of this, and this is one that you hear often. If you go to a Billy Strings show, he plays this song sometimes. Anyway, I'll play you out with a little bit of Roll On, Buddy. I'm going to that East Cape Road. I'm going to that East Cape Road. I'm going to the east, I'm going to the west. I'm going to the one I love best. Roll on, buddy, roll on. Roll on, buddy, roll on. You would roll so slow if you knew what I know. So roll on, buddy, roll on. I've got a good woman just the same. I've got a good woman just the same. Good woman just the same, says she's gonna change her name. I've got a good woman just the same. Roll on, buddy, roll on. Roll on, buddy, roll on. You would roll so slow if you knew what I know. So roll on, buddy, roll on. I've got a home in Tennessee. Yes, I've got a home in Tennessee. In sunny Tennessee, that's where I long to be. Way down in sunny Tennessee. Roll on, buddy, roll on. Roll on, buddy, roll on. You wouldn't roll so slow if you knew what I know. So roll on, buddy, roll on. Roll on, buddy, roll on. Roll on, buddy, roll